Hi, this is Andrew, the first production techniques video looking at tips and tricks on developing your music. In this video, I'll be creating an 808 bass patch by exploring the ES2 subtractive synthesizer found in Logic Pro. For those who don't know what an 808 bass is, the 808 is a bass instrument originating from the Roland TR-808 drum machine from the early 80s. Producers heavily sampled the kick drum from this machine to use as a bass instrument opposed to the percussive one which it was intended for. The 808 bass has dominated the pop music industry through its heavy use in hip-hop, grime, trap, dubstep, as well as drum and bass. Many students ask me in my computer-based sessions, how do I make an 808? And surprisingly, you don't need high-end plugins such as Massive or Serum to achieve the tone, as it can be created with any subtractive synth. So in this tutorial, we're going to look at the ES2 and start by creating a blank preset. So to achieve that, if I click on the drop-down menu, and in the settings, go into tutorial settings, and I'm going to select analog saw initial preset. So this should wipe the front panel, giving just a blank preset. So when I press a key, an unfiltered sawtooth is produced. So the first step in achieving an 808 bass is selecting the correct oscillator. So the waveform we want to select is a square wave, which produces nice bass tones because it has a fundamental frequency as well as odd harmonics. It has that hollow, bassy tone. So the next step is to remove some of the frequencies from our square wave, so we're left with just a bass tone. So to achieve this with the ES2, if I move the bend to the left, so we're just using the filter section on the left, which is by default set to a low pass filter. If I press a key and move the cutoff down, you can hear that the high-end harmonics from the square wave is filtered out, leaving just the bass tone. So on its own, it's a pretty decent bass tone, pretty good for sub-bass, but to get that signature thud that you get with an 808, we need to have pitch modulation, which can be achieved by applying a modular envelope to the pitch of the oscillator. So to achieve that in ES2, the secret lies in the modulation matrix. So at a glance, it can look quite complicated, but once you get your head around it, it's actually quite easy. So to set a modular envelope to the pitch, in this case, I want envelope 2 to control the pitch of oscillator 1. First, I set the source, what I want the modulator to be. In this case, out of the options, the envelope 2. And I don't want any keyboard controls, so I can remove the mod wheel. So I can switch that one off. And I set the target. So here you have a whole array of destinations you can set your modulation. By default, it sets the pitch to 1, 2, and 3, meaning that the envelope will modulate the pitch of all 3 oscillators. Or I can have it just set to 1 oscillator, in this case, pitch 1. So in this instance, because we're only using 1 oscillator, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to set it to pitch 1. So when I press a key on the keyboard, I'm not hearing any effect, and that's because I need to set the depth of the modular envelope controlling the pitch of the oscillator. So that could be achieved by moving this fader here. So if I turn it up and press a key, you can hear there's a slight pitch bend in the tone. So the greater the value, so the higher I set the fader, the greater the value the pitch bend is being applied by the modular envelope. So for this instance, for this bass patch, I'm going to set it about 3/4 away. So that's kind of the range of about 3 octaves. So you can hear there's a nice pitch bend going on there. With the envelope, I can sculpture the movement of the pitch bend. So at the moment, it's got an instant attack, medium decay, no sustain, and full release. So for this one, I'm going to turn the release all the way down because I don't need it. But if I temporarily just turn the attack about halfway to 3/4 away and press a key, you can hear that the pitch goes up and goes back down, because what's happening there, the attack has a medium attack, so it's bringing it to the value of 0, bringing the pitch up by about 3 octaves, and when it hits that point, then the decay brings it back down to the original pitch of what the oscillator is tuned to. But because I want a thud, I need to have an instant attack. So as soon as I press the key, the pitch is instantly reached 3 octaves up, then just goes down. Like so. And the secret is applying decay to the instrument regarding the pitch and having a really, really tight decay. So if you notice, every time I press a key and decrease the decay, you can hear that the decay gets quicker to the point it's almost just like a thud. So I'm going to set it about here. So now I've got the bass tone, but with a thud at the beginning due to the pitch going down in the range of 3 octaves. It's always good practice to set the synthesizer to mono or legato. Reason why that is, when a bass instrument is performed, say if there's notes overlapping, it can make your mix sound really muddy. So by having it mono, set it that regardless of how many keys is pressed or how many voices are used, the previous note gets cut short and replaced with the new note. So in this case, if I press F on my keyboard and press A, you notice it hops from one note to the other, so it doesn't play a chord. Where if I set it to poly, it plays both tones at the same time, which is not suitable for a bass patch. So I'm going to set it to legato. There we go. And if I perform my instrument now, so it sounds like a bass patch, but it doesn't quite sound like an 808 yet. So at the moment, it sort of cuts a bit short. So with an 808, most 808s have a tail on the volume. So when the key is released on the keyboard, there's a tail bringing the volume back down to 0. So that lies with envelope 3 on ES2. So if I set the volume envelope about 3/4 away, so I want it quite a long release. You can hear now it's got a nice tail, so it's filling out the gaps between each note, which is giving that more signature 808 tone. But if I want it tighter, I can just reduce the release. Like so. But for this track, I quite like it long. And to make it more dynamic like an 808, there's no sustain on the volume. So if I bring that all the way down, so now regardless of how long I hold the key on the keyboard, the sound would decay back down to silence. And that is determined by the decay on the volume envelope. So I have a really short decay. Almost sounds like a tom. But if I set it to quite a long decay, so I get a full body, and over time, it should just decay back down to silence, regardless of how long I set the keyboard. There we go. So at the moment, my instrument's got this kind of unwanted click sound. And that is caused by the volume envelope being set too quick. It's so quick, it's created a click. So if I just soften the attack by a few milliseconds and try it now, there you go, the click's gone. So if I bring that back to the beginning, so you're getting the click, and I can just soften the attack a little bit just to reduce. There we go, and that annoying click is gone. So I pretty much got the basis of an 808 there. And obviously what lies in the 808 is dirt. So I can add just a little bit of distortion just to rough it up a little bit. And I can also boost the resonance around the cutoff point. So if I increase the resonance, that boosts the frequencies around the cutoff. So if I do it extreme, you can hear it kind of adds a bit of a squelch. So you can go a little bit too far with it, so I'm just going to bring it down to about halfway, so I'm getting more of a bite. And another secret of an 808 is to add a burst of harmonics when the initial attack occurs and bring it back down. And I can achieve this by using the same envelope used to modulate the pitch, but it doesn't modulate the pitch, it modulates the cutoff. So if I set my second source here, so I can set envelope 2, yet again I don't need it to be controlled by the keyboard, and set the destination to my filter cutoff. So I'm going to set it here to cutoff 1. And I can just increase this for flavour. So I can just turn this up. So I'll do it extreme. Almost turns into a heavy distorted kick. I don't need that much high end to come through. So if I just reduce it just very small amount, a little goes a long way with a kick like this. There you go. You can hear there's now FUD with my 808. So if I bring that back down to 0 and have a comparison, so that's smooth. And if I add a little bit of envelope modulation to the cutoff, there you go. So I give my 808 a little bit more of a bite. So I can just finish this off with using a glide tool here. So what glide does, glide emulates the performance as if the notes are being bent or glided as if you're a guitar player gliding your hand along the fretboard. So at the moment, if I press F on my keyboard and then A, it jumps from one note to the other instantly. But if I add just a little bit of glide, like so, now when I press one key to the other, the notes bend from the previous note to the latest note that's been pressed down on the keyboard. So in performance, so we're getting heavy thuds, full 808, and you can hear a slight glide with the notes when it jumps from one note to the other. So let's hear the 808 bass in context. Well, that's it for this video tutorial. I hope you found the content useful, and I'll see you next time.